Hello, and welcome to Storybridge. I'm your host, Patti Lucia. I'm a teacher and author, and I want to help you use the power of story for self-growth. Every week, Storybridge features stories based on the commemorative days of the month, or my musings about the power of story. The following episode is a recording of my guest appearance on a podcast hosted by Monty Dean, an Australian comedian. In this conversation, we explore the power of story in movies, television shows, and the global narrative.
Hello, and welcome to the Monty Dean Show. Yes, it's back. I've dusted off the show, and I ran out of guests. That's why I stopped in August. But here we are in June. So, like Doctor Who with 16 years break. It was, we rested the show. But my first guest back to this wonderful little shindig, which is, as we spoke off air, like the 17 different websites, because big tech and censorship, is, would you like it, Pat? Because I know you got your full name. What's your name? What would you like to be called?
Well, I go by Patti Lucia.
There you go.
I'm as an
Monty
author,
Dean.
right? And but on my books, it's Patricia. But but I go by Patti.
Differentiate, because Patricia sounds much better as a writer.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like, have you Patti? Like, Patricia.
Not so much. What is this, a schoolyard?
Yeah, exactly. No, she sounds intelligent.
Exactly.
So, for the viewers, listeners, people I'm subjecting this to, you're a writer and you deal with story, but you've got like a blog post and where can people find you?
Let's see. Well, I'm on all the usual ones except the Twitterverse, which is a place you like. That's a playground, battlefield that you like. I don't play there. But on Facebook, it's Patti Lucia Writes. Instagram, Patti Lucia Writes. YouTube, Patricia Lucia Author. Am I leaving anything out? Oh, and I have my website is Patti Lucia Writes, and that's where you can find everything by, get my book, by, look at my podcasts or my live streams. Just pretty much everything I do is on my website. Yeah.
Oh, nice. And in simple words, you talk story, obviously.
I do. Well, I really believe in the power of story. I think everything is story. Humans are natural storytellers, and so natural that we actually don't think much about how important or how central storytelling is. It's kind of like we don't think much about, like having opposing thumbs has been really important in human development and human evolution, but we don't really think much about our thumbs either. So storytelling, I think, is much like that. And unfortunately, because most of us aren't really conscious, we don't really think consciously about the power of language, the power of story. It can be very easily used against us, and it is. So I'm all about, hey, how do we use the power of story for us. Yeah.
And we were talking earlier how the state of storytelling today is very interesting, because it seems to be going political instead of good stories. Like, oh, excuse me, I had dinner. I'm in the middle of watching Superman and Lois, which is the latest Superman TV show. And it's by the CW, which is, I think the W's Warner's. But anyway, it's like their 5th or 9th superhero show. But it doesn't seem to be, dare I say, woke or PC or SJW. It seems to be just good storytelling. And that's why I haven't done anything for the last day and a half, because I've just watched all the episodes. Yeah, which is cool, because I need to, like, when I start a story, even if it sucks, like, I need to know how it ends, because I may miss something, and I need to know all the bits so I can formulate everything in the universe. And we'll get to this a bit later, how TV shows, or maybe in books as well, they cancel them without finishing the story. That is so
Yeah, I
irritating.
hate
It's
that.
like, no, just finish. Oh, come on, just
Yeah.
it's annoying. So,
And for
um,
those of us who are like we lean into conspiracy, right?
mm,
We'll often, look at something that's been canceled and say, "You see, it was getting a little too close to the truth. That's why they canceled it." Where I'm not so sure that's, there might be elements of that, but I think that places like Netflix, they're so inundated that they're like bringing on new shows and canceling shows all the time,
yeah,
and it's just a numbers game.
their pattern seems to be really weird. Like they hardly go past 3 seasons or get to three
Mhm,
seasons,
mhm.
and even if it's popular, which is weird. I don't know
Yeah,
if it's a tax break or something where there's a big burst and then the second season, and then it's cancelled. The
mm.
latest one that I'm familiar with is a show called Jupiter's Legacy, which in 8 episodes you have no idea what the title means. So like, why?
Interesting.
What? But they spent like nearly $400 million on it. It seemed to be successful. People, it wasn't high grade Avengers type level, but it was okay. It was worth watching. And let's see what they do for season 2. Apparently, it's been rested and rejigged like after one season.
Interesting.
Yeah, like why would you do that?
Mm.
Why are
Well, they
you messing
certainly
with
had
my
the
program?
money. They had the money to
Yeah,
do it. But yeah, so you wonder about things like that, and that could be connected to why things are canceled. Like, is it there's a heck of a lot more money at the beginning,
yeah,
and so why not just cancel that and start a new one because we have this whole flush of, capital coming in with a
yeah.
new
An accountant
venture.
involved. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. But I
yeah.
haven't
It was
seen
just
that. I did see Jupiter is rising, Jupiter ascending, and that was
ascending.
whoa.
Yeah, that was only a movie by the Wachowski siblings because they're
Mm,
both transgender. They make good movies. I don't care.
mm,
Mind you, when one of them said, "Oh, The Matrix is a transgender story," like, yeah, why didn't you mention that back in '99? Why
yeah.
did it take 21 years? And I don't see it, but because it's about freedom.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, Jupiter ascending is very similar to like the Loosh market that Andrew Bartzis puts forward, that we're a farm
Absolutely.
and there's the
Yeah.
harvest and everything else like that.
Very
And
tied to that. Yeah. I mean, I follow Andrew. I followed Andrew for years, so I know what you're talking about.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I'm into all that. But yeah, yeah, it's very much like that. And there have been movies, and shows that have come really, really close. Another show that was canceled that I loved the story was The OA.
oh
Um,
yes, yeah. The first season, like,
whoa.
what is this? And I'm like, but people loved it, and I had to get to the end, and it's like, oh, okay, and it made you
Yeah,
think. Especially
absolutely.
like they're doing that. This weird dance saves people. It's
Yeah,
like, yeah, you're actually a distraction, but still, you're 100% correct. It does save. Then the second
exactly.
season, it had that extra boost. I think, yeah, because the like an underground popularity. It was like, oh, people like this. We'll get another writer in. Oh, I'm not sure of the
Mm,
background. And then the way that they ended season 2, there may be spoilers, ladies and gentlemen,
yeah,
because we're talking
it's gonna be.
stories, and it's like
Yeah.
we can't say like the thing with all. Oh yeah, that was great. No, there will be spoilers, but they actually, and it's a good twist, and that's interesting about storytelling today is when a twist works, because there's only
Absolutely.
there's 6 stories basically, and they keep
Mhm.
changing it, and you can see it when it's a formula. It's like, oh, that's going to happen. Then I
Mhm.
ruin movies by myself. Like, oh, that's
Mhm.
going to happen. Oh, I don't know if I'm sensing it or it's just formulaic, but um, they they jump timeline, don't they? Or they
Yes,
go
they
into a
do.
parallel.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
go into a
The
parallel
interesting thing
timeline.
is, yeah, the parallel timeline, I think it's this one. They end up in the actors' bodies. And
Yes,
so they're not playing themselves, they're playing a character that came into their, and it was like, oh, this is
that's
awesome.
right.
And then it gets canceled. I'm like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah, because that's a whole other thing too about acting and performance. And when you step into a character, like and it's very much like when we are writing and we create characters.
Yeah.
And so you're creating these characters. So are the characters real or not? And I've had the experience of writing a story, and then years later meeting the character that I
Okay.
created.
Yeah.
And so really very, very interesting. So that
Well,
whole line.
yeah, is that a paradox? Like, did I create this person, or
Right.
am I tapping into the creative energy of the universe and the and then it's like, oh, I wrote about you 3 years ago. Hi,
Hmm.
without knowing
Hmm.
who you are. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Uh,
did that character already exist and we tapped into it, or did we create it and now the character, I mean, now that person, I mean, it's kind of, we are creators after all. So,
yes. Yeah.
so.
Yeah. I've had an interesting experience on DMT where I only had little bits, and not a 14-minute trip or anything, and it meant Clockwork Owls, which I think, like, I'm sure someone on the other side's taking the piss. Like, someone's in DMT, push out the guys in the Clockwork Owls costumes. They won't know. Oh, la la la. But I realized that in my time stream, I had like deja vus
Mhm.
for this moment. And of course, when you're in that high frequency, you start to giggle. And then the realization is it wasn't a deja vu. It was me in this moment going back into my time stream and leading those crumbs to me. And so I created my own paradox.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I laughed for another 5 minutes.
Mhm.
So it's fascinating how everything is created. Like when you write, because you're using your imagination, obviously, when you write,
And the
and when you,
imagination is,
yeah,
that's tapping into all kinds of. But what
and
were you going to say?
is it, yeah, is it your own holodeck, or is it you're tapping into a world and having, and so if you create a whole character, it exists somewhere, and then because it's written word, which is in a way a script, people create their own version of the character as well, where it's probably, I don't know, 15% variance, because
Mhm.
you have your version of the character, and it's written well enough to describe that's Mary perfectly. Oh, I thought she'd be taller. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that's why books and reading are still popular, because you're actually engaging your own information. I'm kind of lazy. I
Absolutely.
like watching movies where it's like, oh, that's what they're doing. But
Yeah, but it doesn't really leave room for you to tap into that. And I
yeah,
agree. That's why I don't think books will ever really go out. But something you just said kind of reminded me of something that I talk about at the very beginning of the year with my high school students. I teach English
hmm,
and language. So um, the power of writing, so hundreds of years ago when kind of folks were transitioning into the written word,
yeah,
because there's very few people knew how to write and read. And so as we were transitioning, the act of putting letters together to form these words was called spelling. And you've
mm,
probably heard this, but spelling is referred to as spelling because people believe that is that's how powerful words were, that they literally cast spells.
yeah. And
So
grammar is from like the
Grammaire,
gramophone or what?
like the spell book.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So
It's kind of this is why I'm terrible. My spelling's utterly shocking. So
yeah,
yeah,
mine too.
but
Yeah, I used to say, yeah, people can't accuse me of being a witch this lifetime because I'm a terrible speller.
yeah,
So
exactly. I think it's a safety mechanism so we don't create
yes,
Armageddon. It's like, oh, you
go
got
with
that
that,
wrong.
Monty. I'm gonna go
Yeah,
with that.
yeah. Or we're
All right.
unique. It's like, well, no, well, the English language is a growing language. There's a British TV show called Adventure in English. I
Mm-hmm.
can't remember the gentleman's name. There's 8 episodes. I think it was 2005, 2004, 2005, and it just follows the English language for the last 1500 years. And like today, a third of the words are French. Anything with a "shon" on it, like station,
Mm-hmm.
what which idiot Tion is pronounced Shun.
Mm-hmm.
Tion,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, play Tion, yeah. Saffron, and it keeps growing, and slang, and they keep adding words to the dictionary.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. And then they go to India, the United States, Australia, and I think somewhere else, where English is evolved locally. What's the lovely joke? Someone in America, I can't remember, it was in the 1800s. The English language is completely perfect, and it's divine. So I'm going to change it. And so, like Z and Z and S and all, yeah, it's fascinating. Like,
Well, it's
you've heard
really.
something.
I'm sorry, but it's really bits and pieces of the cultures that were conquered
Yeah,
by, so it's very much like how religion is developed over the years, and dominant religions today have pieces and parts of old ones.
yes, yeah, oh, yeah, yeah,
So language is like that, and it's really interesting that both language and religion are used when conquering a people. You
yeah,
take you take
yeah.
over the language and impose your own, and you take over the religion and impose your own, and that's how you can really conquer a people.
Well, yes, that's actually brought up in the Adventure of English that for a while there, the royal family were French in England. So the English court only speaks French, and you had just the Old English, which is a very, very strange. Like, what? You can see where it's sort of coming from, but it doesn't make sense at the same time. It also points out how the printing press liberated the people, because in the church it was all in Latin, and then
Hmm.
the pastor, vicar, father, dude with the frock,
Yeah,
whatever you want to call it, yeah,
yeah.
would sort of translate and then do a sermon. Now, even a sermon, it's not 100% storytelling, but it has to have like a rhyme and a reason, and there's a through line where they like, if they have to make a point, they use allegories and examples, but that's a version of storytelling.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Allegory. It's very powerful part of
Mm,
storytelling. I mean, when you think about, like, for instance, the Bible, right?
mm.
In the major religious texts, they are allegory and metaphor.
Yeah.
We conceptualize our world through metaphor much more than we think. Um, it's very much there's a book that came out, metaphors we live the metaphor we live by, metaphors we live by, and by Lockhart and Johnson, and they talk about how, like, we don't even realize how most of the abstract concepts we think of are thought of in metaphor. Like, if you, like, for instance, the concept of time. If you
Mm.
say time is blank, and people in our culture, in American culture, will say time is money. And so we
Yeah.
relate to the concept of time is, you're wasting time, you need to save your time, you need to budget your time, you need to. So our language related to time is money language,
Mm,
and
mm.
the way we relate to it as a limited resource, a commodity, a limited resource, just like money.
Yeah.
But if, and that metaphor is not for money, is not used in other cultures, but in industrialized countries, it's all about, time is money. We value ourselves in terms of, what would you be paid hourly? What's an
Yeah.
hour of your time worth as opposed to an hour of a lawyer? Something. So in that really comes, you can kind of boil it down to the metaphor of time is money, and then everything comes out of that, and we underestimate the power of metaphor in everyday life. So you could say, and I like to call metaphors the story within the story. And if
Yeah.
you actually change your metaphor, would you change the way you think about it, the way you talk about it, and the way you act? That's how powerful just this one.
And it's fascinating too, where I don't know if it's. See, I'm going to get lost now because I don't know big words, but like you have sayings through the language, like the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
Now, because it's 2021, I don't know if it's true or not, but I like the story, so that's
Hmm.
what I'm going with.
Hmm.
During World War II, they would load ammunition into fighter planes, and all the bullets are linked together in a belt, and the belt was 27 feet long. And so when you give it the whole 9 yards, that's the 27 feet.
That's right.
And of course, when you use, the whole 9 yards, it means everything. Because I being, an outsider for America, like 9 yards is like, well, isn't like in American football, you need to go 10 yards. So it's like 9, why stop there? It's a strange type of thing, but it's fascinating when you find out these little things and where they
like
come
the
from.
source, like where they come from. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then hear how they're being used today, because things like I used to watch the Flintstones, and they had a gay old time.
Yes.
And of course, they were happy, and I'm sticking to that, because if it's today's, like, that changes the entire show. They have do they have a gay old time? Well, fair enough. So, but it's even woke.
Yeah. Then Barney would have to be running around in a tutu, I think. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, the word woke is actually from the civil rights movement, where the African Americans, they wake up to the oppression that they were under back then. Not now, but it's middle-aged white women take it, and it's like, and Karens, and I want to see your manager, and that's where there's a woke. Like, people say, "Are you woke?" No, I'm awake, because the people, it's a slight difference where when you're awake, do no harm and care for people. But when you're the woke thing is based on telling everyone what to do. It's an element. It's like Antifa, like, we're fighting fascism, then stop acting like it.
Yeah. Then take off those boots, right? Yeah, no, I agree. And I've said, because I've had I've definitely had some real concerns about the whole woke movement from the beginning. And people used to say, what do you think about woke? And I'm like, why is it past tense?
Yeah.
All right, past tense. I know, because I think, like, it's whatever that is, it's past tense, and I like to think of myself as continuously awakening to new realities, new truths. And so why is it past tense? So
it leads into you woke up, so you're asleep now.
Yeah, exactly.
So you would be awake then. It's right. I never thought of it that way. I'm going to use that. I like that.
It's so past tense. Oh, that's so past tense.
That's like you're living in the past.
You are living in the past. You're living in the past.
I like that. Yeah.
And it's so interesting because people think that they're the cutting edge of the future, and they're actually using a past tense word to describe their movement.
Yeah. And they're trying, we're progressive. Then stop acting regressive.
Exactly.
Like, some of the examples you see, it's like, do you want to go back to segregation? I think black people should have their own water fountains. Like, whoa. I'm not I know a little bit of history. That's kind of wrong.
Right.
It's that whole separating thing. I mentioned on my shows that being an Australian or a citizen of the United States, because I still think Canada to Chile is all of America. I'm a hardliner that way. But going to the United States, New Zealand, Canada, Australia, mate, all the offshoots of the British monarchy, they're ideas. Like, you've got native populations, but anyone can be an American. Anyone can be an Australian. It's just an idea. When you have racists in Australia, we're full of what? Space? We have 25 million people in the size of the United States. It's basically Los Angeles across the entire 48 states. We're full. I mean, now 2/3 of it is desert, but still. But yeah, if you move to Canada, it's an idea. It's being a Canadian. Now, if you go to Germany, or let's not even go into the whitewashing, where it's actually Deutschland, and Germany is just a white man's word. But that doesn't even make sense. Germans are white. So, like, it's like, the French versus the English. Oh, the white man's killing them. It's like, well, they're both, God's on our side. Well, which come on. yeah, when you move there, where there's like thousands of years of history and tribal, and you can go back. Like even, being German is an idea as well, but see, I've got to be careful now, so I don't up. Why am I doing this voice?
Huh.
You can become German, but your lineage doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
Basically, nationality is an idea, but it's like, all Australians are racist. I'm like, well, why is there so many races here? And you're
Mm-hmm.
wrong. They're tribes because
Mm-hmm.
there's only one race,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when people stop talking to me. Like, you're silly.
Yeah, it's kind of just going back to story, right?
Mm,
So apparently, you talk about going back thousands of years and the indigenous
yeah.
people and so forth, and we've been around for much longer than even our history. But you have his story, and it supposedly begins with the written story, as if the
Yes.
oral stories that were passed
Yep.
down for thousands and thousands and thousands of years don't count. It's when, when these folks arrived, usually the conquerors or the explorers or the
Yeah.
conquerors, that's when the official story of an area, a country, whatever area of the world begins. And that's when the
Very.
boundaries
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah, it's like here in Australia. Now, people argue over invasion. It's like, well, they started a colony and then they spread out.
Hmm.
It falls under the invasion column. It
Hmm.
wasn't like they came and started slaughtering everyone. They came
Hmm.
later.
Hmm.
But basically, in short version of what happened in Australia is the English turned up. Everyone else turned up and left. The English stayed. Like the Spanish were here, the French, the Dutch found Western Australia 200 years earlier or something
Hmm.
ridiculous like that. But it was all sand and like, well, this is crap. We're leaving. The English
Hmm.
stayed. There was a lot of frontier wars for about 70 years as the colonists spread out across the land and they engaged with different tribes. The only
Hmm.
problem is, so unfortunately, the Aboriginal people, they went to war and they lost. And that's when the British sort of won everything. But there's never been a treaty. It's been over 200 years. And so there's like a spiritual wound, and there's like Australians, and then there's Aboriginals who are Australians, and there needs to be for me anyway. I mean, people, oh, you're
Hmm.
just a white man. It's like, well, I'm not saying what should be in the treaty. I just know there should be closure on
Right.
the conflict,
Hmm.
and it's fascinating where in the history books it's like, and that's when Captain Cook discovered Australia. Yes, the land that has a civilization that's been here for 100,000 years.
Hmm.
That it's I mean, it's perspective, but it's like, really, it's like someone,
Hmm.
yeah, someone from let me see, someone from Japan pops up in San Francisco. I've discovered a new land. It's like, well,
Hmm.
explain all these buildings. Like
Right. Right.
and it's that, yeah, and the brutality. And back then the English thought God was an Englishman, and they thought they were better, and they didn't invent the wheels because they lived more spiritually and not physically, where
Hmm.
they could
Hmm.
actually morph into animals and use the dream time and everything else like that.
Oh
There's a reason
yeah.
they survived for 80,000 years.
And there's a reason why those stories had to be subjugated.
Yes.
You come to, so you have, Columbus, coming to this part of the world, right? And landing on the island of Hispaniola. And Columbus kept a journal. And one of the things, speaking of story and language, right?
Hmm.
Um, One of the interesting entries in Columbus's journal was his observation that among the Arawaks was, by the way, it took 10 years and the Arawaks were wiped out
Yeah.
because of the, gold hungry,
You
Europeans who
can say
came in.
Spanish. Yeah, you can say
Yeah,
Spanish.
yeah, yeah.
Then,
But
not
yeah,
Spanish today.
yeah. But at any rate, he noted that the Arawaks had no word for jealousy.
Ooh,
So if they had no word for jealousy, it meant that that emotion didn't
or concept. Yeah.
or concept didn't exist. So
Mm.
why wouldn't it's fascinating. Why wouldn't jealousy, why would they have no word and have no real experience of jealousy? How is that possible? Because in our culture, it's like, how could you not be jealous? There are so many things to be jealous about, right?
Yeah.
Not that we say, oh, jealousy is this really great human emotion, but we see it as something that's automatic, that's natural. We humans, we naturally feel jealousy, and that's why we have a word for it. But jealousy is really connected with the sense of possession and ownership. And
And a hint of
so,
loss. Yeah.
yeah. And
Mm.
so all of those concepts were either they didn't exist, or they were completely conceptualized in a very, very different way. Where so in relationships, their relationships were fluid. They did have partnerships, but it wasn't there wasn't marriage, there wasn't you're mine, I'm yours kind of
Mm.
arrangements. They had a very different relationship to the land. This is
Yes.
my
Yes.
land, it's not yours, and so forth. And so that one word said so much about their culture. So it was, yeah, I think, a beautiful, beautiful aspect of these people, but it also made them and the indigenous people of all of the Americas extremely vulnerable to
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
conquerors.
I was thinking what's the right word, and it is because of well, they wouldn't have met a prick. In short, like, so yeah,
Mm.
ever before. Why would they be even like, I mean, they had braves and warriors and there was fighting, but they didn't it was just a different culture from the old world, which
Mhm.
has thousands of years, even from, say, Rome, like Rome's civilization, where Rome was okay if you agreed with everything that they said. Like, you can assimilate with us or we'll kill you. And,
Mhm.
oh, you're assimilated,
Mhm.
right? Keep everything you like. Then it just had to an element of subjugation and a hint of slavery,
Mhm.
as well as they had slavery. But same thing with here in Australia with the natives, the New Zealanders natives, the Maoris, or I think I'm saying that
The
wrong.
Maoris. The
Yeah,
Maoris.
yeah.
Mhm.
My lovely comedic thing is they're lovely people till you upset them.
Mhm.
But all those Polynesians are just family. But if you upset
Mm.
them, they just go instant warrior, and it's not off the
Mm.
handle. They usually means you've offended them deeply, and they just like they don't put up with any type of
Yeah, but you know that even if you watch the Maoris, the New Zealand soccer players, and
yes,
that the dance that they do
yeah, the haka,
before
yeah,
the haka, oh, it's like that is some fierce shit. And
yeah,
but it's also really amazing to watch. But
yeah,
that's just them saying, we're proud, we're here, and we are going to honor our people in victory or something. I'm not really sure, but something
yeah.
like that. And it's not we are going to kill you and take off your heads, though it really almost looks like that.
Yeah, yeah, this is a friendly one. Like,
Yeah,
oh,
this is a friendly one.
yeah. So yeah, from a knowledge of the New Zealand history, the Maoris actually, I don't think they won, but they stopped the British,
Mm.
and that's why they got a treaty. Because it's like, you know what, these chaps seem to be very upset. Let's sit down with them. But if you've seen any traditional Maori fighting, they have sort of like a staff around about that thick and
Mhm.
this long, and they can destroy you in 3 seconds. They just know
Mhm.
exactly what they're doing. They've
Mhm.
got the build and the strength. Apparently, they use trench warfare. They would dig trenches, and that's where the British apparently got the idea for trench warfare, which
Mm.
kind of makes sense if you're being fired at and you don't have anything to hide behind. You
Right.
just dig down, and
Yeah. Yeah.
but the Australian, there is an Australian apathy because it's so hot all the time. It's like, you want to do something? Nah. But also, there's a connection to the land, and then you've
Mm.
got the British elite saying, "No, no, this is ours." You what? How can it be
Mhm.
yours? The spirits, and they've been treated like crap. Oh, it's kind of, the other thing is Australia needs to sort of accept their our history, because a referendum. it actually went to the government couldn't make their own decision, so a referendum went to the people, and the question was: should Aboriginals be counted as people and not fauna? And that was in
Wow.
1967. It's like, yeah,
Wow.
you wonder why there's been issues for a while
Mm.
between the natives and the government. But
Hmm.
as we know, with just all governments suck.
Mm-hmm.
But there seems to be it's slowly getting better where it's that classic thing. Even it's not an Australian idea. I think even American have the similar idea of let's be nice to each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's like care. You see it all over the world when there's a national disaster, natural disaster. Just the locally, I mean, even worldwide, something happens like the tsunami, Boxing Day, or just after Christmas Day in Indonesia, where a wave just wiped islands clean. The whole world
Mm-hmm.
chipped in, and it's getting to that point where this is why I think people say, "Oh, humanity, we're doomed." It's like, yeah, but you're not looking at
Yeah.
the other side where
Yeah.
we're doing so well.
Well, I mean, I also think it comes back to story. So, I've heard
Yes,
Andrew and I've heard you say, the world is owned by psychopaths and run by idiots.
yes,
And, these are the folks who control pretty much the global narrative. The global narrative is the collective story. So we want to control the story of everybody. Right. And
yes.
so, and that story leans heavily into a dystopian kind of story. And the thing is that there are, but then the folks who want to control the story are up against the reality of who humans really are, which is
Mm,
exemplified in the example you just gave, is that
yeah.
no, we're actually far more compassionate than you guys would like to. You're writing our story, and that story's a lie. And I
Mm,
think in a way, there's kind of like this pressure. I'd like to think, maybe I'm being idealistic. It could be, Monty, that there's a pressure up against the global narrative about the real story. So there's a gap between the real story of humans and the global narrative.
I agree. I use different. I would use different. That's the other thing as well. People have same ideas but use different language, and you get to it's like, well, that's what I said. I'm not saying we're in competition, but other people's like,
You
I
could
would
say it
say
in many
something.
ways. Yeah.
Yeah, but then someone says it exactly at the back. It's like, yeah, I just said that. Usually they say the same words, but it's that's like the optimistic side of things of the global narrative, because that's why Andrew and I use the TV show metaphor. That the
Mm-hmm.
see, I'm learning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The writers of the narrative suck, and it's
Mm-hmm.
people aren't engaging with it anymore
Yeah.
because it's not
It's like, that's
transfixed.
not my story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because well, that's utter shithouse,
Yeah.
and it's not my story.
Exactly.
Like with the pandemic and everything that's going on, when I leave the house, people wear masks. We only have to wear them inside today because everything changes. But apart from that, if I don't look at the news or talk shows or anything else like that, I have to feed my cat. I bathe. I cook. I try to clean. I watch TV shows or movies. My life really hasn't changed
Mm-hmm.
unless I look at the better way I say it. If I look at the global narrative, okay. But if I ignore that, 98% of my life is not part of the global narrative.
Well, your story then is based on your experience.
Yeah, my own
So if
little dream bubble.
that's right, but that's real. And then you have the story that is projected at us through the media. And so it's
Yes.
almost like they're saying, this is your story, this is your story, this is your story, this is your story. And there is this disconnect between, for most of us,
Mm.
between our lives, the lives that we're living, and this story that we're being told is our story.
And there's
And
an element of that, like there's I'll split there's the narrative, but I'll split into two. There's our story, then there's the false reality that the media puts forward as a
mm-hmm.
story, and then you have the flip side of there's that second part of that of it's like, the system doesn't work. Well, it does. It just doesn't work for us type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, if life was like the mainstream media, how it portrays it, up until say Trump got in, like it's like everything, we're doing well and blah, blah, blah. But then
Mhm.
it's been creeping into, it's heading towards the negative, where if you watch a news program, don't, because
Yeah.
it's usually like
They
warm,
don't.
death, famine,
Yeah.
age, cat up a tree, here's the
Yeah.
weather, and
Yeah.
sports in there, and it's just negative all the way through. And they make
Yeah.
anything negative.
Mhm.
A local sporting team unfortunately won today. Like,
Exactly.
who cares? Yeah. And it's just distraction and everything else like that. And then it's fascinating where people. Oh, so I just did a show before I started this one, and talking about how like they're using kind of the same template, the same story, because we're talking story, so I've got to keep.
Let's keep doing it.
Yeah, patent operation. It's still a story,
Yes.
and now think
Well,
loosely.
that's the formula, right? You know how we talk
Yeah.
about stories being formulaic?
Yes.
So that's the formula for for particular stories that are put out.
And this is where you start leaning towards conspiracy realists, because
Mhm.
the theory, all the theories came true, but it's pattern recognition.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
loosely, I can see how Barack Obama got in, how Trump got in, and the Q phenomenon.
Mhm.
They're all similar based stories, different
Mhm.
characters and slightly different plot,
Mhm.
but it's still the same: build the tension and then no release, build the tension, no
Yeah.
release.
Right.
I can see the
Problem,
positives.
create the problem,
Yeah.
the solution, problem, solution,
Yeah.
problem, solution. Yeah.
Problem, reaction, solution.
Yes, yes.
With Q, now at the starting point, yes, it's a troll or a psyop.
Mhm.
It was a negative thing to multi-pronged of letting people down so they feel dejected. Also, making conspiracy people look even more stupid. I
Mhm.
mean, we can do that ourselves. Let's be
Mhm.
fair.
Mhm.
But the positive side of things is, apart from, if you take that core, if it was a genuine happy idea that came through, just look how many people got together. They're all focused. They had a goal, and the networking, and people made all new friends and everything else like that. To me,
Mhm.
I can see the potential in humanity that there's we'll win in the end. I have no
Yeah.
idea how long that will be. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But
We might lose a lot of battles, but we are going to win the war eventually.
yeah. The example I actually use is it popped up in the news yesterday, I think. Adriana, the pop singer, she was in Manchester and there was a bombing 4 or 5 years ago. It's like, well, that's a bold terrorist act, because you don't attack. I mean, obviously, as a concert is an easy target, but you, if you start doing that, everything gets clamped down, and the
Mhm.
FBI actually may do their job
Mhm.
instead of trying to instigate. But the thing is, they have those false flags. The thing about false flags is it really happens. It's
Yes.
the motive behind it.
Mhm.
People were running out of the stadium, obviously, because a bomb went off and they were scared. The thing is, didn't work 100%, because people were running in to help,
Mhm.
and to help humanity. There are the brave
Mhm.
people going in,
Yeah.
and that's the example that I use. It's like, well, these controllers don't control everything, and as you've
Mhm.
seen in the last 18 months, they suck at
Yeah.
trying to control it, and they're always
Yeah, they
catching up.
can't, they they have come a long distance in relating to humans as cows on a farm that they harvest, but in the process of that, they underestimate the real human spirit, which
Yeah.
is exemplified in that, in what the story that you just told. There's like it makes me when you're talking about like the global narrative and making conspiracy theorists look like idiots, there are cracks in that. So you remember a
Mm.
year ago, anybody who said, listen, I think this virus was like maybe a lab leak. Like, I think, that there might be something to that. They were all seen as crazy tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorists.
Censored.
Yeah,
A lot of
censored.
censorship.
And in just the last month or two, now it's like, well, it's almost like we've been granted permission to talk about a
Yes.
lab
Yeah.
leak without being called names. So there's
Yeah.
been a shift in that, because I think when you try to control a global narrative, the thing that you idiots don't see is that you've got 8 billion of us, and we all are, we're all in different parts of the world doing our different things, and there are scientists and there are inventors and there are all kinds of really, really creative humans who are looking at the same situation going, you know what, there's something really fucked up about this.
Yeah.
And you can't control, that many creative humans.
Yeah.
That's the idiocy of the folks who think that they can control the global
Well,
narrative.
that's like, yeah, comedy. An element of comedy is to make connections other people haven't thought of, and you do it in a funny way.
Right.
And so I really need to have examples when I say stuff like that. But as a writer, let's go back to October 2019, when the virus started showing up in Wuhan, China. And we'll just skip to the end to now. Like, so it's not 18 months. That's 18 plus 3 is 20, the last
Yeah.
21 months.
Yeah.
Like, we have to stop at every sentence and go, well, that doesn't make sense, because
The numbers
wear
don't add
masks,
up.
don't wear masks. Yeah, the numbers don't add up. That, like, this, who wrote this? This is terrible.
Yeah,
The
it's
editing,
terrible writing.
the story is just doesn't make sense at all.
This script will win no awards.
No, no, it won't. It could be made into a Star Wars movie, but apart from that,
Only one of the later ones.
Oh yeah, it would be Disney Star Wars, of course, because
Right.
Representation. We've got an Asian in there. Nothing wrong with Asian people. Actually, if you want to talk about racism, go to Asia. Man, they hate each other. It's funny when I don't like a script, and I got called sexist, racist, and a homophobe, and like from a script's only pages, right? But if you look at the actual narrative or the story of COVID-19, it started out well, and then it started to leak out. So it got out of China. So whose fault's that? And then the third week of March, that's when the world decided to go on lockdown, and that's when coherent thought left the story, because it was so we're a year and a nearly it's 15 months into our 2 week to flatten the curve. And that's the other thing why their narrative's falling apart, is because we have over 12 months of data, and it doesn't make sense with we have to lock down because 4 people have a case. Like in the state of Victoria, which is, how can I describe it? It's like a triangle at the bottom of Australia in the southeast. And there's a town that called Mildura, which is on the border up near the Murray River, because the top border of Victoria is mainly a river. But I won't bore you with the rest of that. But they're at Horsham's about 5 hours drive, so Mildura could be 6 to 7. I haven't been there. I think I've been there once, but it took a couple of days. 6 or 7 hours drive. And they have to go into lockdown because someone in Melbourne has a case, not a death, but a case, because it's statewide. It's like, I don't think COVID has ever got to Mildura, and they've have to endure the social distance, the physical distancing. Let's talking about story in words, social distancing. Like, I'm a hermit. I've been social distancing for years. It's physical distancing, masks, and now we have to sign in everywhere, so we're tracked because of contact tracing. There's the part of the stories. We could walk past each other on the street, and somehow COVID's jumped, and we infect each other. Like, okay, that sounds very desperate from the storytellers. Oh, it's a fleeting contact.
Mhm.
Right. So only a year ago, it wasn't airborne, according to the CDC. And yeah,
Yeah.
I'll stop there. I realize I'm
Yeah.
ranting and I could just go
Yeah,
for an
yeah.
hour.
No, but the story is always changing. I think just because the narrative has holes, the script has holes in it. And
Yeah.
so you have to always be patching, you're patching up your script, and
It doesn't
it
hold
becomes
water.
it doesn't hold water.
Yes. Now, we don't have to think about that metaphor where that comes from. It's like,
No,
well,
no.
like, you've
That's
got
pretty straightforward.
yes, it's a grass bucket. Of course, it's not going to hold water. But it's on a global thing, and the amount of damage and uh, battle lines are drawn. Here in Melbourne, we've had freedom rallies and lockdown protests, and as it keeps going on, the people disagreeing with them is slowly pulling back because when they did it like a year ago, oh, don't you know there's a deadly virus? But over time, that idea is like, well, hang on, it's not that deadly. I mean, it
Hmm.
does affect people, and people with yeah, not corrupted, but health immune. The immune system's being a compromised health immune system.
Hmm.
It can be deadly because your your immune system's been compromised. But if you're healthy, you can sort of survive through it. Because remember, one reason they put forward, which I think they dropped around about this time last year, is they don't want the medical system to be overrun because
Right.
it was so contagious. And it's like, as we keep going, year two, year
Hmm.
three,
Hmm.
they're just making more people angry.
And
I
that,
find
the thing,
that's
yeah, it's almost like it follows the same pattern with, like almost every disease. It seems like the cures that they come up with are often more deadly than the disease in the first
mm,
place. Like, for instance, chemo for
yeah,
cancer. Right. And it ends up being the chemo ends up killing you. So here, the cure was these lockdowns, keeping the hospitals empty and ready and all of that. And what's happened is you have more people dying of suicide. You have, mental health issues, depression. You have whole economies that have been wiped out. You have hospitals who are going to close because they haven't made the kind of money that they need to make to stay open. So
mm,
in the end, you have whole
other
systems,
effects, yeah,
yeah, that
yeah.
have been
Oh,
completely
we
destructive.
we forgot the TikTok videos.
What about the TikTok videos?
Well, I mean, apparently, yeah, they're overwhelmed and the hospitals are full. Then all these nurses and doctors are creating TikTok videos dancing.
Oh,
It's like, oh, you haven't
oh,
seen
you
that?
know what? I kind of stay away from TikTok. I'm a high school
Yeah,
teacher, and I stay away from TikTok because my students talk too much about it
and rightly so.
for all
Don't
the
get me
wrong
wrong.
reasons.
It's a good thing. It's like I only see TikTok videos because someone shared it on Twitter. It's
Right.
like, look at this. But there was for a while there last year, there were the nurses like in the whole hospital. They were all wearing their operating garb.
Yeah.
It's like, well, how much money is being wasted because you can't use that anymore because you've soiled them. But they're all doing TikTok videos. It's
Yeah.
like, well, hang on.
Well, we have to do
I've
something.
Yeah, I know. It's like, weren't you saving? Aren't you the real heroes? And you're doing TikTok videos,
Right.
like, and it's just part of that. Part of the thing of like the global narrative does not have total control,
Right.
and because they're trying to push it. That's why I don't like. Even if the New World Order comes into place, it's only going to last 8 months because it'll eat on itself. But I don't see
Right.
unless they go hard, quick. They cannot do it slowly,
Right.
or be too slow because it's like, what do you mean I have to? Like now with the vaccine passports,
Mm.
and it's like it's so
Really?
weird being
Yeah.
yeah it's like
But
oh,
there are
everything
there
is
are a lot of people who, but there's a segment of the population who it's like, oh man, there's going to be vaccine passports. I better get my vaccine. So that
yeah
has been one way to get more people who might have been vaccine hesitant to take the vaccine. But you've got things popping up all over the world about the effectiveness of ivermectin. I don't know. And so now you've got people saying, wow, there's another way for me to protect myself and deal with this without having to take a vaccine, which more and more evidence is showing that it is not as safe as they say it is.
Yeah, I saw an article, or I don't read articles because I don't have the time to plow through all this stuff just to get one line in. So I just read the headlines.
Yeah.
Now I know that's a bad thing, everyone.
Yeah.
But apparently British Airways are worried about their pilots getting blood clots because they've taken the vaccine. And the friend who actually shared it pointed out, what would happen if they got a blood clot while flying a plane?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's interesting. Like, do you remember if it popped up on your radar December? So about 6 months ago, when they started to roll out the vaccines, and after 2 days, that story was dropped from the news because it didn't go well.
Like, are you talking about the blood clot story?
No, it wasn't. I don't think it wasn't blood clots back then, but it was like, and here's the first person getting vaccinated, and either the story didn't get picked up enough,
or there were things happening that they didn't want to happen on camera.
Yeah. Now there was a woman in the United States.
Wait a minute, what happened to Joe?
Joe, can we
Joe.
Like there was now this is where we get into conspiracy and misinformation as well, or the way that misinformation is used. There was a nurse that apparently passed out after having a vaccine shot. Now, the rumor is that she died. No one can prove that. But my question is, let's just go back to the start. And they knew
if she died, it wasn't the vaccine, Monty.
I know that.
If she died, it wasn't the vaccine.
I know 3 skydivers. Yeah, 3 skydivers died from COVID. I mean, their parachutes didn't open, but it was COVID. Yeah. My question is for a PR, not stunt, but marketing presentation. Why would you pick someone that would faint when they get a needle? That's not going to sell the product now, is it? It's like, oh, I'm fine, but I hope she's alive. But there's stories about a nurse who was pregnant and they've had the jab and they've had a miscarriage because it's experimental. We don't know what's going on.
They're finding out more and more about that, by the way.
Yeah.
About the ovaries, accumulation in the ovaries. I don't know how much of this you even want. Like, we don't have to get into this because I don't want you to be.
Oh, no. It's it was funny at the start of last year where it's like, you find out the symptoms of COVID. And I'm a smoker, so 90% of them I already have. Like, well, how would I know? Right. And the other one is, house arrest. You can't go out for this, and this. It's like, well, I've been doing that for the last 7 years, but because you've told me I have to stay in, I want to go out now. I defy you. So it's been fascinating how the narrative has been unfolding. Now I can lead back into TV shows being cancelled. It was during 2020. There was an American show called Utopia. I don't know if you heard of it.
I did hear of it. I didn't see it. I don't think. Yeah, I don't think I.
Yeah. See, because more British based. It originally was a British show from 2013, 2014.
Okay.
And so it's the American remake. For whatever reason, apparently, no, we can do it better, or vice versa. It's TV show like Stanford and Son and Steptoe and Son. It's the same show, but made locally. They're both good. But Utopia was was cancelled because it got a little bit too close for what was happening during thing. But the English version, and it's basically the same plot line, and they've just changed it to local references. However, there's a secret organization that creates a fake virus outbreak, and they want everyone to get this vaccine, which makes you infertile, except for certain people, and it's to save humanity by
reducing the population or something.
Yeah, reducing the population, not killing anyone, just stopping people reproducing.
Sure.
Yeah, and you can you see why this got cancelled last year?
Yeah, I can totally see how that got cancelled.
Yeah, it's like, hang on, this is way too close. Even if it's like the conspiracy stuff, you don't really, if you're going through a pandemic and having that fear factor, you don't want to watch a show about something similar.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, you
exactly.
don't watch a plane disaster movie on a plane.
No, not a good idea.
No.
There's been a lot of talk about V for Vendetta,
Yes.
which is fascinating. I highly recommend it if people haven't seen it. Now that whole thing,
Wachowski siblings as well. The
yeah,
Wachowskis did that one as well.
yeah, that's interesting. They also did Sense8.
Yes, that they were allowed to finish that as well. I think they did one season, or no, two seasons, and it got cancelled. But the fans made
Oh
such a
yeah.
stink about it. They were allowed to do a finale to end the
Hmm.
story.
Yeah,
So
I remember.
it's
I watched it. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. But V for Vendetta was, it's very, very close to the to kind of what's happening. The situation that we're in right now, and it was set. I don't know what year this movie came out. It came out, oh my goodness, in the early 2000s, but it was set in 2020.
I think I think it's 2028. However, the
Oh, it
virus,
began. Yes, the
yeah,
virus
the
began in
the
2020.
virus or whatever it is, which is now we won't give spoilers on this story. It's worth it's based on I think a 1980s from the 1980s a comic.
Yeah,
And yeah, it's just and that's why in the future, and it's like, well, we're here now.
yeah, yeah.
And it's just fascinating how it's all done and the way that the character that's played by Natalie Portman as
God,
well, where
I just have to say, I love Natalie Portman with
so do
a
I, but probably
shaved head.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I
It's,
loved her as Padme in
mm,
Star Wars. She's
mm.
so lovely. Don't want to talk to her though. She doesn't seem to be, but she's a very attractive young woman.
Yes. Okay. So anyway, sidebar on Natalie Portman.
Yes.
So,
And yeah,
and
gallant good
what
eyes.
were you? See, it got us both flustered.
Yes. Well,
What were
now
you saying?
interesting. Well, let's go. We're sort of heading towards the end of the show.
Okay.
Um, uh, have you watched the first Wonder Woman with Gal and the second one? Have you watched either or both?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely watched the first one. I'm not sure if I watched the second one, but I loved the first Wonder Woman
Yes, because they didn't
because of
have the
her.
PC. Yeah, well, yeah, she's attractive, but it was it seemed real, like an actual
Yeah.
like I mean it's obviously Wonder Woman, but
Yeah.
there wasn't like male hating pandering and everything's
Yeah.
like
No,
that,
exactly. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
there was when I say innocence, I don't mean childlike, but there was that innocence of there wasn't any political grandstanding.
Yeah.
Some people didn't like the ending, but well, don't watch it. Your free will.
Hmm.
But it works. And with when people complain about a comic book film, I instantly I think it's a comic book film.
Hmm.
Like, so what if a small woman's beating up? Like, it's a comic book film. It's fantasy.
Right.
The second movie, though, they didn't get the same writers in, and you can tell because it's like, wow, this is so weak and just
Hmm.
yeah.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
interesting. The thing about Hollywood is, like, say, if you write a screenplay, that's cool, but there'll be 8 to 18 people meddling with it while it's in production and editing, because it's all done by committee now. A committee. There's no like you need a George Lucas. Well, actually, you need George Lucas with someone here to say no occasionally to George. So, but it's basically now studios. It's like there's a Star Trek show called Picard. Utterly terrible from my
Yeah.
perspective.
I haven't seen it, but yeah, no interest
Uh,
there.
well, it's completely opposite of what Star Trek was, where
Mm.
hope, humanity, they deal with stuff. And in
Hmm.
this one, oh no, it's fighting against Trump, and it's like,
Oh God.
yeah, it's dystopic. Star Trek's full of corruption, and and all of this is apparently in the storyline of 20 years. So it's like, oh, well, that's one thing I don't like about stories as well is the multiverse.
Hmm.
Like I liked Star Wars and Doctor Who because it was the one story. Even Star
Hmm.
Trek from the Bill Shatner stuff in the 60s up until Enterprise in 2004, 2005, that was technically all well, the history is it's all one
One
story
story.
where Yeah, but now it's all like, see, because you got Batman and Superman, they've been around for 80 years.
Mm-hmm.
That you sort of have that multiverse thing going on, which kind
Mm-hmm.
of makes sense. But when you have the one story and then they go multiverse because they're creatively stupid,
Mm-hmm.
like Star Wars has 30,000 years worth of history.
Oh yeah.
Why would you need to go? Why would you have to go to another timeline?
Right. I agree. God, talk about classic. There are young people who are totally into the original Star Trek. So that says something when you have younger generations very much
Yes,
attracted
there's
to
that timeless.
something. Yeah. And they're not saying, oh, that's whack because it's, has no special effects or whatever, but are drawn by the storyline. That's when,
Yeah.
it's like a good
Well, even
story.
look at J.R.R. Tolkien is still
Mm,
popular today, and it's
mm-hmm.
because of just, I mean, even if you just read two of his books, which is The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings.
That dude was tapping into something, though. I mean,
Oh,
he created a whole elven language. I mean, like, what? How did he do that? So that man was, yeah, I'd like to, if I'd like to ask Andrew about that man's galactic history.
yes, because he was a traditionalist. He survived World War I, and so he probably saw the industrial age from
Mm-hmm.
the darkest point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a not environmentalist. He was a conversation, not conversational. Yeah, save.
Conservationist.
That's the way. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
See, yeah, I'm supposed to be good at talking.
Mm-hmm.
But England didn't really have a mythology like the Norse gods or anything else like that.
Mm-hmm.
It probably did with the Druids, but it was wiped out of existence by
Mm-hmm.
whoever. And so that's where he created this whole world. And like the Middle Earth is kind of representing Europe, and the men from the East is people from the East.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I'm not sure how many Elven languages, but he did Dwarfish. He did all this stuff, and he just did it for fun.
Yeah.
And he created, instead of just like Lord of the Rings itself, creating that world and having a little bit of backstory here and there, is enough. But that was the third age. I think it was the end of the third age. He went on to expand on the second age, where
Mm.
Sauron came from, and just the everything like in the Mines of Moria where Gandalf fights with the Balrog. He
Mm-hmm.
probably spent 4 weeks on the backstory of the Balrog, because as a writer you need to create, you create all this
Absolutely.
stuff for just one thing. And um uh,
Yeah.
when you were mentioning about when you sort of go into the character that you're writing and
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure out their motivations, everything else like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's his pen name. I can't remember his actual name, but Robert Jordan, who wrote the Wheel of Time books. Have you read them or heard of them?
I have not read the Wheel of Time books. No.
Yeah, there's 15 of them, so if
Wow.
you've got a couple of months off,
Yeah.
uh, but it's a clutching thing of book one 300, by book five it's 1,000 pages, like just bang 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 bang, and it took
Interesting.
12 to 15. But it's a through story. There's so many characters, and it's similar to Middle Earth, because it's the size of Europe with different characters and everything else like that.
Mm-hmm.
I read somewhere that he would write one character, which I think Patti and Fane. Any Wheel of Time fans, don't crucify me, but you know who I'm talking about. He works for the dark side, but his wife would notice when the author was writing him, because he would completely change as a person and get it
Mm-hmm.
cranky and sort of have that dark
He
stuff.
would immerse himself almost like how method actors immerse themselves
Yeah,
in the character. So there's a similar process that goes on for authors when they're immersing themselves in the character, and you kind of wonder where they go. You know what I mean? It's just
yeah.
it's
Oh, yeah, they
that's
step out. Yeah.
they do.
Jim Carrey playing Andy Kaufman
Yeah.
in Man to the Moon,
Mm-hmm.
where he stayed in character all the time. And it's like, well, that's a bit of a stretch.
Mm-hmm.
Like when on set, that would make sense, so he could keep the the performance there, but 24/7. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's probably why it kind of explains why Jim's like this now, because he's
Yeah,
unique.
he's unique, and in a way he's probably more like us than a lot of other folks. He's kind of out there. He's into the woo. He's totally
Yes,
into the
yeah,
woo, and you know, good for him. And that's a hard thing to do in Hollywood, which is pretty anti-woo.
yeah,
It's pro woke and anti-woo.
yeah, and he does still work as an actor occasionally. Not sure if he's doing stand up. He did Joe Biden on Saturday Night Live because he hates
Yeah.
Trump, so he had a chance to have a go at Trump type thing. He
Hmm.
was doing Pet Cemetery, Ace Ventura, loser. Like, yeah, fair enough. But one of his hobbies is that he paints,
Mm,
and he paints like two-story paint. Like, his creativity comes out, and that way he loves to paint.
mm,
And he's got his own style, and good for him. Because I mean, realistically, after he made the cable guy and got paid $20 million in the '90s, he's fine. He's not
hmm.
financially in
Yeah,
trouble.
yeah. He doesn't need to
So
work anymore. Yeah.
yeah,
No, that's kind of interesting. But yeah, I find this, when you were talking about the big, like the Lord of the Rings and these big, Wheel of Time and these big kind of like mythic kind of stories, those have
yeah,
great appeal on the screen and in books because I think humans really relate on some core level to that kind of storytelling because I think that comes close to the human story, like this mythic kind
yeah,
of
and
human story, and we're tapping into it. That's why like Star Wars and Lord of the Rings and like these just big expansive stories that involve these multiple worlds and so forth are so attractive to so many humans because I think we recognize our story in them.
yeah, 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 the struggles and battles, and I think also there's a hint of, say, DNA memory of, like, the Star Wars could be linked to the Orion Wars,
Yes, yes, yes. Hmm.
Lord of the Rings, where dragons and hobbits and talking trees and all that, it's
Yeah,
C.S. Lewis type of stuff, ancient type of things. Game of
which
Thrones, 'cause
yeah, Game
I
of
have you.
Thrones. I did watch Game of
Were you
Thrones.
disappointed? Yeah, season 7 is like, oh, okay, let's see how this ends.
Yeah,
And it's like, who made this show? It's complete. It's
yeah.
such a build up. It was such. See, now that was a show that actually got to its end, but
Hmm.
they dropped the ball,
Yeah.
storytelling wise, because it didn't make any sense. And like,
It
I
almost
think the
seemed like
two
there were different.
showrunners,
Yeah, it almost seemed like
yeah,
there were different writers on that last episode. But
yeah, well,
yeah.
well, yeah, was it George Martin, or the guy who wrote it? He hasn't
Hmm.
finished the book yet. It's been 10 years.
Yeah.
He still has to finish the last book, and
Hmm.
everyone's still like trying to give up because I don't think he's got the passion for it.
Hmm.
Or does he dare and write the story that would work, and which isn't the TV show? Because
Right.
a lot of the actors were very upset the way that the characters had their endings as well. It's like,
Mm.
really, after surviving all of the game, because if you watch Game of
Hmm.
Thrones, I mean, I it took me 2 goes to watch it. The first one is like, I watched it and it's like, Sean Bean, he's my character. Oh, he gets killed at the end of the first season.
Yeah, that's
Sean's been
not.
killed again.
And that's too bad. When you have such a broad fan base, now it's almost like your fan base is in kind of imposing their will on the creator.
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah. And then, like, I watched it again for, I think I evolved, and so I watched it again, and skipped over all the nudity and rape because
Hmm.
you couldn't, and the great, but the intrigue and how it's all falling, and season 7's like, okay, because I think they wanted to finish at season 7,
Hmm.
but is it HBO? Oh, whoever had it on, they said, no, this is really good. We want more. And so they curtailed 7, and they um, agreed to make 8. And
Hmm.
so you kind of tell, because 7 is a little bit slower. It's a little bit, from memory, it's a bit mid pace. And
Hmm.
then 8, this is completely, I don't, who wrote this, because it's everything's out of character. You find it,
Yeah.
the whole thing with Jon Snow's the character, and, well, in a basic story format, he would kill the Night King, the ice thing, whatever it
Right.
is.
Right.
And
But he
on
doesn't.
no, no, and it's his younger sister.
Right.
Okay, and
Which I
then at
kind of
the end,
liked.
yeah,
I kind of liked
yeah,
that.
it kind of worked. Yeah, because
It kind of worked.
I can't remember the actress's name. She's brilliant at it. She's like grown
Mm,
up on the screen. She
yeah.
actually did a couple of episodes, maybe about 3 or 4 episodes of Doctor Who, and
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Maisley something. Anyway, comment below. I can't be bothered Wikipediaing, but she's developing good as, especially when you're on Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Like I think she started when she was 13 or something like
Oh
that.
yeah, she was really young. Yeah, so we got to, and that was true for all of the, as a matter of fact, when I saw the first season of Game of Thrones, I decided I did not want to watch it because I hated the way things are going for the women. Like
Yeah,
this sucks. I mean, for everybody, but it also sucks particularly for the women, and I don't really want to watch it anymore. And then a few seasons later, a friend of mine said, "Oh no, things are turning for the women." I was like, "Really? All right, so women are
mm.
actually playing more powerful roles." They're like, "Yeah, you got to watch it." So then I went back and
Yeah.
I
See,
picked it
yeah,
up
so yeah,
again. I picked it up again, but I've noticed that that's true. Like recently got into, somebody mentioned Walking Dead, had not seen it. I'm not into zombies,
yeah,
zombie movies or whatever. But I watched that, and it's the same. It was kind of the same thing in the end. The women, they were flawed, but strong female characters. So I kind
yeah,
of
yeah. The
kind of
trick
like
is to
that.
have
Badass
balance.
women. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. To
you
have
got to have
balance.
balance, because you can't have the damsel in distress, but
Totally.
you can have the male damsel in distress as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Exactly.
Princess Leia is not a damsel in distress.
Nope.
She's a strong one. And that's what,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the arguments in Star Wars where we're not a fan of Rey, and it's not because she's a woman. It's a poorly created character with no fucking story.
Right.
We love uh Princess Leia because
Mm-hmm.
she is a strong. She
Mm-hmm.
doesn't. She has help occasionally, but that's life.
Mm-hmm.
If,
Mm-hmm.
if you're trapped on a flying space station the size of a small planet, surrounded by guards, a hand would be nice. Right? See,
Mm-hmm.
there's a pun for you. A hand,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how they meet each other as well. So, and she
Yes.
basically once, like she takes the blaster from Han and starts shooting, and they get out. She helps them get out of the hallway. Once they uh, get to the rebel base, she just walks straight into leadership,
Mm-hmm.
and there's nothing weak about her.
No.
Even in Return of the Jedi, it's like, if you tell, so what happens in Return of the Jedi? Oh, Princess Leia wears a metal bikini and is shackled by the neck to a fat slug. Well, I don't know about. Oh, she kills the fat slug. Oh, good. Like, and that's
Right.
like, yeah, it wasn't, sex. If you just saw it on the face value, oh, that's sexist and demeaning.
Mm.
Well, Carrie actually wanted to play. She's very attractive in that.
Mm-hmm. She's very
But at the
attractive.
end, like, yeah, she kills Jabba to get away. It's karma, a
Mm.
bit of balance. It's like, he's a vile gangster and he treats people like, and she made sure it
Mm-hmm.
will never happen again.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying to little kids out there, if little Timmy punches you in the face,
You
chop off a
stab them.
hand. Yeah, exactly. Take them down with your spork. But it's metaphorical and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. But then, like, I'm a big Doctor Who fan, and I'm still waiting for the Doctor to turn up because Jodie Whittaker, who's a brilliant actress, she doesn't suits the role of the Doctor for me anyway. People do like her, but I'm like, okay, but I don't see it.
Mm-hmm.
But I get told I'm a sexist because I don't like that she's a woman. No,
Mm-hmm.
I like that she's a woman. She's a very attractive young woman. The
Mm-hmm.
thing is, in the Doctor Who franchise, a season or three beforehand, one of their major villains, who's also a Time Lord, became a Time Lady,
Mm-hmm.
and the Master became Missy, and Missy was played by Michelle Gomez, and she was brilliant at it. There was good writing and the great portrayal. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
judging Jodie Whittaker on her merit and not her sex. but I get called sexist.
I think, yeah, but I think that the age of just a pretty face isn't going to fly anymore. I think
No.
that we have to have roles for women with substance. And so you get a woman on the screen with a pretty face and big boobs, and that's not quite, I mean, that might still work for a segment of the population, but for most of us, it's like, no, you've got to give us more than that, and we need better roles than that. So
Yeah, intelligence,
absolutely,
flaws,
yeah,
and like if
well-rounded characters.
yeah, Scarlett Johansson, who plays
I
Black
love her.
Widow. She, I think for the third time, she's complained about sexism. It's like, yeah, you were in the
Mm-hmm.
role for 11 years, but anyway. But her character and the way she played it is like, yeah, I mean, the problem is people get upset it's an attractive person, but it's like, well, that's what happens in life. There are attractive people, and they're not dumb, and they don't. Now, I don't mean anything against Paris Hilton's apparently very intelligent. She just plays dumb and gets away with it that way. But you don't want that Paris Hilton character. I mean, you probably want Paris Hilton because she knows what she's doing, but you don't want that sort of that dumbed down character where it's like, I'm hot and everyone should do everything for me. And like, even I think the last TV show I saw that was Lost, but the character grew from that sort of self-centered vainness, and they actually grew into themselves and became a better person. And of course, in Lost, they get killed. So
yeah, I like, because I'm a fan of Michelle Rodriguez, despite my better judgment, but liked her in Lost too, and and her character was just rough around the edges and whatever. So
that's she fitted quite well with the character in the storytelling at that point. I recently saw a crappy version of F9. Sounds like a keyboard button, but the latest in the Fast and Furious. And yeah, it says what it does on the box. It's the Fast and Furious. But she's in it again, and they're all getting work, and it's just another franchise. And clearly they're never going to end this story because it's like, oh, the villain gets away and blah 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 or blah blah, and it's
I think when movies become franchises, that kind of says it all.
Sometimes they want to keep doing that, and like when Disney bought Lucasfilm, they wanted to do that for Star Wars, and they turned it into a cash cow or cash grab. The problem is they didn't have the epic storytelling, so they would do that. Like the saga, the last three episodes 7, 8, 9, they were actually 2 years apart. But when Lucas did them, they were 3 years apart. He would finish the film, release the film, and then start working on the next film. When Disney did it, they were overlapped, and that's where problems started. And also, there wasn't a plan, and there was two different directors. And the plan was a saga film, a standalone, a saga film, a standalone once every year. And it's like because it was started to fail because of the storytelling. Oh, there's Star Wars fatigue. Then explain Marvel. Because if the story's strong, I love that Marvel. I'm glad it's kind of ended, because collecting 22 movies is a bit much, especially if you want to watch it all. But that's all one story, all the way through in a thread, and it does slowly build up. Where say like Guardians of the Galaxy, they mention an Infinity Stone. So you can kind of skip that one because what happens in that film is mentioned later on, type thing. But it introduces characters, blah blah blah, and so you could just watch the Avenger movies as one, and it's fascinating. But
for those, they were written already, though, right? I mean, these were all the Marvel. And I'm not an expert, but weren't the Marvel movies based on Marvel stories that had already been written?
Yeah, I think in the late 60s, maybe 70s, there was the Thanos thread, which is about the Infinity Glove. So the plot, the basic plot was there. It makes sense when you've got a comic book source material that's 40 years old. Well, you just take the best parts of it and then build it out.
Absolutely. So they had a much stronger base. So, you look at Star Wars, and you were talking about Star Wars fatigue, but their whole model was very, very different than the Marvel, where they had basically the good bones of the story to start with. And with Star Wars, they were just kind of building the bridge as they went. And they were building the bridge a little too fast in the end, as you were,
you look at the DC universe. I think Warner's release, is it Warner's? Anyway, like the Batmans, the Supermans, they should have done. They didn't have to follow the Marvel plan, but if they actually say the Justice League, they had 5 or 6 characters. Each character should have had a film. Just to introduce them, not introduce them in that film and then try and catch up. Because I think they were, after the Avengers, they were trying to catch up and capitalize on that. So like, well, yeah, Aquaman comes out after Justice League. The Flash movie's still on hold. The Snyder cut of Justice League is more of Cyborg. I mean, if you've got 6 hours, you can watch the Joss Whedon version of Justice League and then watch the 4-hour version of Zack Snyder. And they're completely different stories, and 80% of it's roughly the same. But for whatever reason, he's done it in 3:4 instead of like widescreen. It's like TV, which I found annoying. But it adds more to it, and there's slight quirks, and it could be a response from Joss Whedon's version where it didn't do that well, and now you've got 2 versions, and because they keep doing that. Where I think even Warner Brothers, they had Birds of Prey, and they changed the name 6 weeks after being released to Harley Quinn or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Because I think in Hollywood there's a certain culture where it's all that that woke, all that PC. We're doing. We're on the right side of history. We have a message.
Right. They keep getting memos from whoever. So make sure you include this in your script.
Yeah. But what about the story?
Yeah. No, but just make sure. We're going to give you We're going to give you your vocabulary list. You have to make sure you include this in your.
Now you can hire white people, just British, because they're only the villains and they're British.
That's
I don't know what it is with America. Let it go. It's been 200 years. Every villain's a British person. Oh, interesting. I wonder why. When you think about heroes, and I think comic book, the Marvel series might have done this well, but like if you go all the way back to the Greeks and their heroes, and how timeless those stories are, because their heroes were very, very flawed. Like these were like human, part God, and they were the heroes. They had these amazing abilities, and their flaws were abominable. So I think about that, and I think about how we have just a whole notion of what is a hero has changed so much, but the flawed heroes, the ones that really have shadowy dark sides, which we've seen in these movies, really attract a broad audience, because that is more connected to the human story. That's us, the hero's journey. Everybody's on their own hero's journey. I've got that Joseph's Camp. I haven't read it yet, but when I will, I'll start writing, because I'm going to, not rip it off, but use it, but try and hide the hero's journey, if that makes sense. So, because you can try, you can explain Star Wars. Oh, this is the hero's. You don't want to make it too obvious that it's the hero's journey. Oh, this, and in this scene, he bumps into a clown.
The Hobbit, all of those, that's totally a hero's journey, those, like the Lord of the Rings, all of those. I mean, that is the winning formula, because that's related to all of our stories. Like we are all living our own hero's journey. If you look about your
spirituality, and the tarot as well, and like the Fool, where looking at the sky, got its stick and little back, got the dog, and he's about to step off a cliff,
stepping off the cliff. Yep.
Yeah, that dog sucks, by the way. Or it's revenge. It's like, he's been beating me for weeks now. Motherfucker can fall off a cliff.
Right.
Come on now.
Come on, we got other things. We've got shit to do. I have, because I would love to do this again. And as we were talking, I was thinking of I wanted to propose perhaps a theme for the next time. Heroes, zombies, and aliens.
Ooh, we'll do this again because
it's been so much fun. It really has. Yeah. It's been great
time
fun.
Flies.
Time does fly.
Money doesn't, but time does.
Yes, we'll get into more metaphors like that. We'll do the metaphor for love next time.
No, nice. Because we had a small production meeting before we started the show, and I think as usual it's like point 1, and then 2 hours later, oh well, we had a list to go through. Well, that's what happens. So
that is what happens. So, and that is storytelling, because storytelling is often, it goes like that. If you're interested in being a guest on Storybridge, or purchasing my books, or if you'd like help with writing your story, visit my website, PattiLuciaWrites.com. Thanks for listening.